There are completely well-adjusted adults, kids, and everything else that play video games day in, day out.
Some argue the games are too graphic, give instructions on reloading weapons, appear more like an advertisement for weaponry.
I do think that there are some people that are prone to being able to be programmed with the games and be able to desensitize from that kind of stuff.
Our children play video games and 7 out of 10 of them are violent.
I think there would be less of a distinction between what's real and what's not.
Yeah, I just think it's about people. It's not the video games that make people violent, I don't think.
We're talking about video games where the players kill police officers, they hire, rape, and kill prostitutes.
Over the past 15 to 20 years, is that video games have become much more violent, and consumption of video games has continued to increase. All the while, murders, violent crimes have been on the decline.
It depends on the person, probably a lot of the morals and the way that they were raised and stuff like that.
Video games have encouraged the killing of innocent people for sport.
I played some violent games and when I was a kid, and I was into guns and swords and stuff, and
I'm also one of those.
I grew up, never got into trouble, never was violent, so.
Violent games are nothing new. Whether it's presented as a cartoony farce, played for laughs,
Some kind of fucking sick joke.
or presented in a serious fashion, chances are, if you've played a game, you've seen a violent act in them. But I'm not interested if games cause violence. There's already plenty of studies out there that look into that sort of thing. What I want to know is something a little different. Not whether or not games cause violent acts, but rather if they desensitize gamers to real acts of violence. Does spending hours on end shooting people in the face allow them to watch real headshots with indifference, or are there more factors at play here? The whole debate on whether games create violent people has been around for a while. It gets brought up every single time a new game comes out and it pushes the envelope on violence. But I personally don't believe games create violent people. But what I do want to test for is a growing amount of indifference. Some of us are virtually murdering people every single day. So I wanted to see if there's a link between hardcore gamers and an indifference to violence. So what I did is I made a survey and I posted it around online, and I got about 727 responses. And out of those, 707 were usable. There were a few stupid answers in there, like I knew there would be, so I went back and double-checked all of them. I controlled for things that I felt would play into someone's influence on violence, whether you see it in your profession, watch a lot of violent TV shows, if you're in the military, stuff like that. So, as to be expected from an online survey, the sample had a few issues. Most participants across the board were white males. I didn't gather enough females, Hispanics, African Americans. It was mainly white people. Besides that and a couple of other little things, there were actually some useful information in there. And the most useful was the average age of all the participants. The vast majority was in their 20s, and the average age of gamers turned out to be 23, and non-gamers was about 24. So I used that and I scaled down the experiment to focus on that subgroup. So what I'm gonna do is just simply take 10 men, 10 women in their 20s, and run them through the exact same experiment that the people in the survey did. I'm gonna have 10 gamers and 10 non-gamers on each side, so 5 and 5 for each. And then I'm going to compare those results. It's not the shining beacon of statistical significance, but experiments are fun. Before we get into it, I have to stress this experiment will not be defining any hard truths. The candidates we approached willing to be interviewed on film for these shenanigans had the same issues as the sample size. Most of them were white. Though we couldn't get 10 men and 10 women to agree to be filmed for a live audience, we were able to at least get their data anonymously for comparison. At best, we could really say this is only a light litmus test. The experiment itself is really quite simple. The candidates are going to be sit down and shown 8 different clips. Each clip will depict a different act of violence. Half of them will be in video games, and the other half will be in real life. We're going to track the candidates' reactions over the course of the experiment, and keep tabs on which videos garner the most response via this simple counter. We'll be factoring in our anonymous responses into the counter along the way. I'm also going to blur out all of the real acts of violence except for one of them, so heads up for that. Now let's see how our gamers stack up against our non-gamers.
I'd probably fuck her.
Everybody needs to be cool.
Jesus, his nose is a fucking fountain. That's funny. Just straight dome shots. He does not give a fuck.
Oh my god.
Yep. That's a gunshot.
No.
That's good. It's terrible, actually, but I mean, when you're dealing with people in Rwanda, I mean, what are you gonna do? That sucks. Why is it
make a joke, but it's inappropriate.
That's disgusting. It's pretty brutal.
Is that dude alive?
Or is that a brain?
That's a brain, right?
Can't even see it.
Oh, I know what it is now.
Yeah, actually I did think it was interesting. The violence that was portrayed in the graphics in the video game was actually less disgusting than the violence portrayed in real life. So, because it wasn't an imaginary set, it is less disgusting, however, still kind of gross.
I think there's a huge double standard when it comes to video games, violent video games, as opposed to violent TV and movies. You know, Game of Thrones, the most popular TV show in the world of all time, probably. Someone's getting their head lopped off every episode, but no one's running around the streets with a broadsword trying to kill people. I mean, and that's, of course, you can say, well, we're not in the Middle Ages, but there's, you know, thousands, Jason Bourne, or pick whatever movie you want, someone's dying, and I don't think that has a huge effect on society. A good story has to have conflict. Conflict usually leads to violence. Video games are another form of stories. They're just interactive, and people think because you're controlling it, that somehow means that you are doing the violence, but I think it's the same as watching a violent movie or TV show, and that it doesn't influence people to behave that way in real life.
The disparity between the gamers and the non-gamers initially seems pretty large, but this counter isn't factoring in the people who couldn't finish the experiment, only actual reactions to clips. When you factor in every clip not viewed by a person who quit, the actual difference becomes, well, negligible. The actual difference between the two groups looks like so. A disparity of 6 isn't really all that large. It's a little surprising that it was actually the non-gamers in this test who were actually able to view more violence with indifference, or even amusement sometimes. But it's a little more than likely that a repeat of this trial will shift those numbers around. Remember that most of the controls laid out for this experiment were all tossed out the window for this test. For example, one of our non-gamers was active military duty. Were you ever in active military duty?
I mean, obviously, yes. I still am.
Something we knew could heavily influence one's sensitivity to violence, and as expected, he easily made it through all of the clips, mostly just commentating on them.
That's good. It's terrible, actually, but I mean, when you're dealing with people in Rwanda, I mean, what are you gonna do?
Then there were some big surprises, like from some of our female non-gamers. They would mostly just game casually. Do you play anything at all?
Yeah.
Oh, what do you play?
I love Wii. A lot of Mario Kart, a lot of Mario Brothers, a lot of Mario, just in general.
So it's just Mario?
Mario?
Mario. Then it turns out they could just stare down even the most dire situations with a smile. But when grouped in with the rest of the test takers, female non-gamers had twice as many reactions to violence than males. Just not these two. When you factor in all the people who quit, the total disparity between the female and male non-gamers was only 1. Then when you look at the disparity between the male and female gamers, you get a disparity of over 10. These are the kind of situations that make me wish I could enforce the controls more effectively. But until the day I can sweep the US appropriately and have the means for conducting a better experiment, the sample size is all I got. But despite all the inherent flaws of this little litmus test, the results reflected the larger sample from the survey. The real violence was the main source of discomfort, and it was very rare for the virtual violence to actually cause someone to quit the experiment. From the test, 100% of the people who quit was because of the real violence. Sure, Whitey may be representing the sample size, but honestly, the numbers weren't even close. The real violence easily got the most response out of everyone who took the survey. We may be violent psychopaths online, but most of us seem to have our sense of humanity and empathy intact. We can't say anything is a fact given the methods, but I do think the numbers have a very little shred of merit. We're pretty good at distinguishing between the real and the fake. And when faced with real violence, most of us couldn't watch it without feeling something.
Very overdone, I think. I like overdone. Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Hey Omar. So the marketing department would like for you to ask at the end of the video if you could ask the viewers to like and comment.
And possibly subscribe as well.
It's proven to increase the viewer base and instill a sense of loyalty. The viewers really like it if you
constantly address them. Subscribe if you like this content. Like, comment, subscribe. It's up, YouTube. Diversify your portfolio. Thanks for watching. Stocks and bonds.
Is it filming? Alright, yeah. Both of us walk away. Yes?
Oh yeah.
Fucking do it!
When you have kids, it's like, you know, definitely something you have to like really take into consideration, like what you expose them to. So even when they were babies, I remember he would be watching like horror film or something and they'd be sleeping in the other room, and I'm like, you can't let babies hear screaming and all this stuff. It's not good for them.
I think no matter what type of violence the kid's exposed to, whether it's on the TV or on video games, I think you become somewhat numb and indifferent, and maybe the heart becomes a little bit hard.
Not really. I'd probably feel just as shocked or anything else if it happened, you know. It's not like something I'd see in my normal life.
I don't need to see that.
Do you wish to continue?
No.